Hey everyone, Jason here from Simply Swider. Is your Frigidaire refrigerator's water filter completely stuck? You've tried pushing, pulling, maybe even considered using pliers? Stop right there. In this video, I'll walk you through 4 proven methods to safely remove that stubborn filter without damaging your refrigerator or breaking the bank on a service call. Good news is, most of these issues are totally fixable without calling someone like me out to your house. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group. Links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Now, here's the thing. When people call me about stuck water filters, they usually think it's just jammed from being tight or they're not pulling hard enough. But in reality, there's usually something specific going on with the internal mechanism or the housing itself. Real world breakdown. Internal latch problems are the big one, probably about 45% of what I see. Thermal issues, where it's basically frozen in place, come next. Then hydraulic pressure problems and aftermarket filter tolerance issues are the least common. Here's what's actually happening inside your refrigerator. Frigidaire filters use a push to release mechanism with internal plastic teeth and springs. When those teeth misalign or springs detach, your filter gets permanently locked. Think of it like 4 layers that can fail: the filter cartridge, the housing mechanism with its springs and latches, water pressure buildup, and temperature effects. We'll check each layer systematically, starting with the safest and cheapest solutions first. A stuck filter will always live in one of those layers. Our job is to figure out which one with the safest checks first. So the most common issue I see is the internal latch system completely giving up. I had this customer last month with a gallery model. She called me panicked because the filter went in but wouldn't come back out no matter what she tried. Here's what's happening. Inside that filter housing, there's a sliding plastic cage with teeth that's supposed to lock and release the filter. When you push the filter in, it should spring back out. But if those internal springs detach or the plastic teeth get misaligned, the filter stays locked permanently. You'll know this is your problem when you push the filter in and there's zero spring back. It just sits there solid against the back wall with no give whatsoever. Here's the critical mistake most people make. They grab pliers and try to force the filter out. Stop! This will snap the filter face off, leaving pieces stuck inside your refrigerator and turning a $50 fix into a 200 plus repair nightmare. Instead, here's what you need to do. The real fix here is usually replacing the entire water filter base assembly, the housing itself. It's about 40 to 50 bucks for the part, which beats a $200 service call. If you're comfortable removing one screw to access the housing cover and using a flathead screwdriver to manipulate the locking teeth, this is totally doable as a DIY fix. Another common cause is the filter literally being frozen in place. This happens more than you'd think, especially on gallery and professional series models where the filter sits right near that cold air coming from the freezer. I remember this guy who called me in winter. His kitchen was cold, fridge was running extra hard, and that filter was locked up tight. What happens is the plastic housing contracts in the cold, and any moisture around the filter collar can actually freeze, bonding the filter to the manifold. You'll notice the release button moves but doesn't do anything, or the whole push to release feels completely rigid. Sometimes you can even see frost near the air vents or back of the fridge. Here's your free fix. Grab a hairdryer and set it to medium heat, not high, which could crack the plastic. Hold it about 6 inches away from the filter housing and move it in circular motions for 10 to 15 minutes. You'll know it's working when you start to see any frost disappearing and the housing feels warm to touch. This expands the plastic back to normal size and melts those ice bonds. Don't ask me how many times I've driven out to a house just to use their hairdryer for this exact problem. Now, here's something that catches people off guard. High water pressure can actually create a vacuum lock that makes the filter impossible to remove. This lady called me once complaining her filter was jammed, but when I tested her water dispenser, that water was coming out like a fire hose. What's happening is if your house water pressure is running high over 100 psi, those O-rings on the filter get pressed so tight against the housing walls that the friction is just too much for the release mechanism to overcome. You might notice the filter turns slightly but is extremely hard to pull, or the push button is way too hard to press. Here's the simple fix. Turn off the water supply to the fridge. Usually there's a valve under your sink or behind the fridge. Then go to your water dispenser and run water until nothing comes out. This relieves all that internal line pressure and the filter should release easily. Way cheaper than calling someone like me to do the exact same thing. The least common issue, but still worth mentioning, is when third-party filters just don't fit right in the Frigidaire housing. I've seen this where someone buys a generic filter to save money, forces it in during installation, but then it jams when they try to remove it because the manufacturing tolerances are off. The connection nipples might be slightly oversized or the locking tabs are just a hair too thick. If you're dealing with a non-Frigidaire branded filter, this could be your culprit. The solution is usually forceful removal, which isn't ideal, and then switching back to OEM filters to prevent it from happening again. Sometimes you can visually compare the stuck filter to an original Frigidaire filter once you get it out, and you'll see the difference in the tab thickness. The water filter base or housing assembly, this is the main part you'll need if those internal springs and latches have given up. You're looking at somewhere between 22 and 53 bucks, depending on your exact model. This is the part that actually holds the filter and contains all that push to release mechanism we talked about. The housing replacement is straightforward and affordable. However, if your refrigerator is over 10 years old and this is your second housing failure, consider this alternative. Install an external inline bypass filter behind your fridge for about $15. This completely bypasses the problematic internal system and you'll never deal with stuck filters again. It's a 30-minute install that could save you hundreds in future repairs. It's about 15 bucks, totally bypasses the internal system, and you'll never deal with this stuck filter nonsense again. The housing is definitely repairable if you're handy with a screwdriver, but if you can't access the back of the housing or you're not comfortable with the water line connections, that's when you call someone like me. For the actual filter cartridge itself, you're looking at 15 to 50 bucks depending on whether you go OEM or aftermarket. Here's my advice. Stick with the Frigidaire branded filters. I know they cost more, but those tolerance issues I mentioned earlier are real. The generic ones might save you 10 bucks up front, but if they get stuck and you have to replace the housing too, you're actually spending way more money. Plus, the OEM filters just fit better and last longer in my experience. The water inlet valve, this controls the water flow to your filter and dispenser. If it's leaking or you're getting that buzzing noise without any water coming out, you're looking at 20 to 60 bucks for a replacement. This one's pretty straightforward to diagnose with a multimeter. You should see 500 to 1500 ohms across the solenoids. Don't replace this one unless you're sure it's bad though. I've seen people replace perfectly good valves when the real problem was just a clogged filter or frozen water line. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise and when it makes sense to repair versus replace. Most of these fixes are pretty reasonable and definitely way cheaper than having someone like me come out. But there are some situations where you might want to think twice about throwing more money at an older fridge. Now, before we wrap up, you can see right there on your screen the most common Frigidaire models that have these stuck filter problems. Gallery and Professional series are definitely the worst offenders, especially with that internal latch mechanism failure. If you spot your model up there, you're definitely not alone. I've probably fixed dozens of these exact units. There you have it, 4 proven methods to free your stuck Frigidaire water filter. Remember your game plan. Start with the hairdryer method for thermal issues, then try the pressure release technique. Both are completely free. If those don't work, you're likely looking at a housing replacement, which runs $25 to $50 versus a $200 plus service call. Most importantly, catch the early warning signs to prevent this from happening again. Early warning signs matter. If your filter is requiring two hands or excessive force to insert or remove, the housing mechanism is wearing out. Catch it early and you're fixing a $0 to $50 problem instead of a $200 service call. And here's something most people don't know. Putting a tiny bit of food grade silicone grease on those O-rings makes future removal way easier and prevents the rubber from bonding to the housing. This pattern isn't unique to Frigidaire either. Anytime you've got plastic latch mechanisms in cold, wet environments, these same failure modes show up across many brands. The diagnostic approach stays the same. If you guys know someone who's having appliance troubles, please send them the link to this video or a link to my channel where I have tons of other videos showing how to fix pretty common issues with appliances, sometimes for free or as little cost as possible. It sure beats having a repairman come out and spending several hundred for them to fix it when it could be something so simple. If this helped you get your water filter unstuck, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.